Good morning, folks. A while back, I made a video of how I created an electronic drum kit using parts of an old acoustic kit and adding um, piezo transducer sensors to link up to a drum module. And that video got a lot of interest, a lot of views. So I thought you also might be interested in seeing how I made an electric cajon, starting out with a basic minal cajon and adding transducers and sensors in the same way. And this one also has a built-in amplifier and speakers. Now, full disclosure, I actually did most of the work on this a few years ago, just got around to finishing it up recently. So my apologies if any of the information in the following video is incorrect. If so, I'll add a note just mentioning that. But I think for the most part, it's pretty accurate. As I say, it started out as just a basic minal cajon. I then took it apart, and this is where I went from there. The first thing I did was I took off the front panel, which is just screwed on, and I cut two semicircular holes with a Dremel tool, and I just glued some like speaker grill cloth in the back to make that look nice. Over here, here's the speaker grill. Not so pretty on the back side. Here, I used stuck in a couple of I glued a couple of pieces of wood there to strengthen the middle of that, because you're going to be hitting the middle of that cajon from the front side. And since I'd made the holes, I was afraid that would weaken the whole thing, so I put those pieces of wood in there to strengthen it again. Beyond that, the main thing back here is these discs, and these are little piezo transducers. They are very cheap. You can buy them on Amazon for something like 50 cents each, or you buy a bundle of 12 for about $6. And I additionally got some connectors, basically just so that I could detach this front panel and wouldn't have to like solder it back together. I got some wires with little plug connectors, and I soldered those onto the cables from the transducers. And basically these transducers will pick up vibration. If you've seen my other video on how I made a set of electronic drums, this is exactly the same type of pickup. These little piezo transducers, I had those in the drums, and in this case they're just glued to the back of this front panel of the cajon. I was thinking that there wouldn't be enough isolation between them, so that, you know, if I hit the cajon here to trigger this one, it might also trigger the one in the middle. So I was sort of thinking I'd have to play around with like foam or something like that to insulate them a little bit. As it turned out, they actually insulate pretty well. So if you're careful when you're playing, you can actually you know, get very distinct sounds associated with each transducer. Here is the body of the cajon. I took the back off of it. I'll show you that in a minute. And once I took the front off, I then glued some pieces of wood across so that I could mount this panel in here. So there's basically a couple of pieces of wood behind this panel just glued to the top and the bottom. And then this panel has cutouts for the speakers. Now the speakers also you can get from Amazon. These are basically like car stereo speakers. They handle a fair amount of bass, which is important. These are not expensive. I think they might have been 25 bucks. If I was doing this again, I think I would actually probably only use one. I think that would be loud enough. And these things are heavy actually, so two of them in there makes the whole thing quite heavy. But in any case, those you know, are aligned with the cutouts in the front once the front is put on there. Now, if I come in a little closer, here are the cables that join up to the back of those transducers. Again, I got these little plugs so that I can disconnect and reconnect them if I needed to. And these are connected to a set of 1/4-inch jacks, because that happens to be the kind of connector that the drum module uses that I ended up with. And again, I'll talk more about that in a minute. But I wanted to kind of zoom in pretty close here. Don't know how well you can see that, but that little blue item on the bottom of each of those jacks is a little potentiometer. Basically, it's a tiny little volume control that you can turn with a screwdriver. And the reason I put those on there was so that I could adjust the sensitivity or the level coming from those transducers into those 1/4-inch connectors, and from there on into the drum machine. So I use those to kind of fine tune the level a little bit. You might be able to get away with not using those. I have a feeling most of them are basically most of the way up, but it's good to have them there just to kind of give you a little bit of control. Now on the back side of this, which is going to be a little tricky to see because there's a lot of stuff back here, but let me see if I can clear the way slightly. So let's look at the top of this section here. Here is the back of that panel. And that is where you can plug in your 1/4-inch connectors. Now I got a drum mod. You need a drum module to make this all work. The one that I found is a pretty inexpensive. It's not a very fancy one. It's made by Cat, K-A-T, and I can't remember how much I paid for it, but it was like maybe $25, something like that. And it has 10 kits built in, which is not a lot, but it's enough. And these cables you can see going to those 1/4-inch jacks at the top are the input cables for the Cat module. And so if I kind of pull out a little bit here, this is the Cat drum module. I think it's a KT1. Let's see if I can turn it the right way up, at least. KT1 drum module. And you can see it has like a large connector in the back there, and all of those cables there go out to those 1/4-inch connectors. And there are a few cables I'm not using. There's some drum sounds that module has that there are triggers for, but I just left off the ones that I just used the ones that I thought would be most useful. And I can kind of, if I ever decide to change what sounds are being produced by which part of the cajon, I can just swap out the cables and get some different sounds in there. You can see on the sides, I glued some more pieces of wood. Excuse me, can you see that? If I turn it around this way, you can. I glued some more pieces of wood on the side just so that there'd be something to mount a back plate on, because I wanted to put the drum module on a back plate so it'd be easy to access the controls. And so the first thing I had to do that was take the entire back off the cajon. And unfortunately, that's not that easy, because unlike the front of the cajon, it's not screwed on, it's glued on. So I had to spend quite a bit of time with a chisel, very carefully going around, and I still need to kind of smooth off some of these edges a bit where the chisel went in. But it kind of came off fairly easily in one piece once I kind of went all the way around it. And then we have these side pieces, and we have a back panel that then screws onto those side pieces. Now the back panel has the KT1 module mounted on it. That's what that upper hole is for. And down here I also have a power input and a 1/4-inch jack. That's actually an output. The power is to power, it goes to a little transformer, which you probably can't see because it's hidden in the back there. But there's a little transformer that gives power to the KT1, the CAT module. And it also gives power to an item that's right down at the bottom here. And that is the amplifier. Again, this was pretty inexpensive on Amazon. I can't remember exactly how much it was. But basically that amplifies the sound coming from the CAT module and sends it to the speakers. That kind of gives the overall flow of how the sound comes from the front of the panel through the transducers into the CAT module and then into the amplifier and off to the speakers. Now that little jack that I mentioned earlier on the back panel here, this guy is set in between the 1/4-inch jacks. Excuse me, no. It's set in between the CAT module and the amplifier. So if I plug a cable in here, it cuts off the amplifier, and instead the sound comes out here. So I can take a line from here and run it into a larger amplifier or a PA system if I want to. So I'm going to put this all back together now, and I will then give you a little demo of how it sounds. So here is the completed Cajon. That's the front view, and from the back it looks like this, which is not bad at all. It's quite neat, despite my bad carpentry. That CAT module fits in there quite nicely, and it's pretty easy to access. You can control the volume from there. There's also volume control on the amplifier, but that's a little harder to get to down at the bottom. Basically that little black control is volume control for the CAT module, and you can access that pretty easily. You know, while you're sitting on the Cajon, you just reach around and change the volume if you need to. Same thing with the kits. You can go up and down through the kits by hitting those plus and minus buttons. So it's pretty handy. Okay, so here's a quick demo of this thing. Up here, that sensor is set for a snare. Got an open hi-hat and a cymbal over here. High tom, low tom, and kick in the middle. There's a little bit of crosstalk, especially some of the kits. I got to play around with them a little bit. Yeah, got a little bit of a crash there. So this sensor is picking up a little from when I hit it over here. I can fix that by playing with the sensitivity, by controlling those little potentiometers on the 1/4-inch jacks, and or by playing with the settings for the kits themselves. So I got a bit of adjustment to do, but overall it's not bad. So here's this particular kit sounds. Of course, you still got the sort of slap that you get with a Cajon. You know, if I ran this through a PA from the jack in the back, then I could turn it up higher, and it would kind of drown some of that, some of the slap. But that's actually, you know, it's kind of nice. That's part of the sound of a Cajon. So you're basically just adding another dimension to that. It's not a different sound entirely, but it just gives you a little more dimension. And as I say, this particular module has 10 kits, including some quite kind of weird ones. Let's see, there's one which is sort of but there's some useful ones here. So yeah, I got a little bit of fine tuning to do on it still, but overall it's pretty handy, and didn't cost an arm and a leg. So yeah, it's not a bad project.